Hello everyone, Tom with Capo Fetish. So coming off the heels of our favorite debut albums of all time, let's talk about some underwhelming sophomore albums. These don't necessarily suck, but maybe there's like one or two tracks that you dig, but the remainder is just kind of, you know, kind of underwhelming. So we all know the story. We've bought many of these albums before. We've been enthralled by a debut album. Then the sophomore comes out and it's kind of like it's a 50-50 chance, right? Either it's going to suck or it's going to be great. Or sometimes it's just underwhelming. Maybe there's one or two tracks on there that are good, but the rest of it just doesn't have any flow to it or any consistency. So most of these like second sophomore albums that suck, I pretty much purged already. So I had to dig deep. Here are like a handful of sophomore albums that I find underwhelming. I wouldn't say they all suck. I would just say that perhaps I kept these because there's a couple of tracks I like on them, or maybe I'm just a completist of a particular artist. So anyway, here we go. Enough of this talking. I'm going to start off here with an album that I was fairly disappointed by back in 1981. Coming off the heels of this album here, I think one of the greatest debut albums of the 1980s, the English Beats, or as they're known in England, The Beat. Their debut, I Just Can't Stop It. Just an amazing album full of just reggae and ska and pop. I mean, just what you call a flawless debut album. So when the second album came out, what happened? What a perfect name for this album. What happened, right? I think the instrumentation is great on here, the playing. I like the fact that they're kind of venturing into more different kind of styles and African beats and such. But man, the songs, for the most part, it's just not here for me. I mean, that's what I noticed as soon as I put this album on. Decades ago, there's just not a whole lot of tracks on here that really register with me. Doors of Your Heart is pretty good. Monkey Murders, Get a Job. I mean, there's a few that kind of prick my interest, but overall, I think just sort of a disappointment. I know there will be people out there that will disagree with this sentiment, but I've just never really registered with this album. Now, the third album I really liked, Special Beat Service from '82. I thought that had some great tracks on it, and they were kind of progressing and moving away from this particular sound, and that would be their last album. But yeah, What Happened? Great title for this album, What Happened Indeed. I just never quite got this album. Another one too, and I think he pretty much blew his entire wad on this album, and no doubt he had lots of songs stored up for this album for many, many years. I mean, it's really hard to, deny the greatness of George Harrison's All Things Must Pass. It's a triple album. The third disc is pretty disposable. It's just a couple of boring jams, but those first two albums, sides 1 through 4, are really stellar. And obviously he'd been, stockpiling songs since like 1966. So, I mean, just a flawless album. So it's no wonder by the time Living in the Material World came out a year later that it just wasn't as stellar. I do love the hit single on here, Give Me Love, Give Me Strength. But the rest of the album is just kind of, George just doesn't seem really fully 100% into this album. Maybe the record company was forcing him to write songs. We have a hit with All Things Must Pass. Let's crank another one out. Perhaps that was it. But like Sue Me, Sue You Blues, I don't know. There's just a lot of things on here that just really are not very good. But I do like the hit single, maybe a couple of tracks on here. I kept it because I love George Harrison, but I've had many other albums of his that I've had to purge over the years that just weren't really good. And I think really after this album, I think he really became more interested in gardening and anything that wasn't music, it was more about gardening and racing cars and producing movies. He did have that hit with Cloud 9 in '87, but other than that, his solo discography is not really that stellar, except for All Things Must Pass, which might be my favorite Beatles solo album of all time. But Living in the Material World, yeah, didn't really register with me. I thought it was kind of a disappointment after All Things Must Pass. Another one too, a debut from 1990, I really loved. I think it's nearly a perfect record and just amazing tracks throughout, is the Sundays Reading, Writing, and Arithmetic from 1990. I thought their second album was lacking as far as songwriting goes. There's one track on here I think is really, really good. I love the song Blood on My Hands. Really love that track. Their cover of Wild Horses by the Stones is pretty cool, but the rest of it is just kind of slight. I think it's just lacking, again, just lacking really, catchy songs like on the first album, great hooks, melodies. I kept it because I like a couple of tracks on here, but I was kind of disappointed by this album. And even their third album I didn't really like, so I really just only like the first Sundays album. I really thought that first album was just stellar, but Blind, couldn't really get into it too much, but I am keeping it. Another one, too, just another fantastic debut from 1970 is Emitt Rhodes' debut album. Really just an almost flawless album. He plays all the instruments. Just an absolute example of just fine songwriting, musicianship. Yeah, it sounds like it was a home recording. Very, very lo-fi. The drums sound like boxes. It all sounds very claustrophobic sounding, but the songs are just stellar, which makes his second album a little less of a highlight. The second album called Mirror, released in 71, just kind of lacks, again, just the songs, I don't know what it is with a lot of artists. I think maybe they're under a lot of pressure to come up with really great material and come up with it quick, especially back in the day. People were cranking out in the late 60s, mid 60s, 3 to 4 albums a year. A lot of pressure. And again, this one was recorded entirely by Emitt Rhodes. There are some great tracks on here. I love the song Love Will Stone You. That is a really good track. And that sounds like something that would have come off the first album. Another one called, what is the one? Really Wanted You, I like. My Love Is Strong. But overall, it just doesn't have the consistency or the coherence of that first solo album, which is so amazing all the way through. So kind of lacking here. Very underwhelming album here from Emitt Rhodes from 1971, at least for me. Mirror from 71, Emitt Rhodes. A couple of good tracks, but otherwise just doesn't have the flow of the first one. Another one, I always loved the first Dire Straits album. I never was like a huge Dire Straits fan. I lost interest by the time of, Brothers in Arms. But I always thought this first album really had some wonderful tracks on it. Of course, Sultans of Swing was the huge hit, but I thought Down to the Waterline, Water of Love is great, In the Gallery, really, really fine album. And I thought the second album was lacking as far as good songs. I love the song Lady Rider. This is their second album, Communique, came out a year later. It's very similar to the first. I think that's the problem. They're not really moving forward on the second record. And some of the songs are very, very unmemorable. Just as a whole, I just could never get past maybe 1 or 2 listens of this. Maybe perhaps I should listen to it again. Decades down the line, right? But I remember just hearing this, back in 79 and just thinking, it just sounds kind of like a carbon copy of the first album. I love their third album, Making Movies. I think that's really great. A lot of different styles moving forward. I think that's a fantastic record, but this second one here is just kind of lacking. Again, I love the single, Lady Rider, but overall, just not really that interesting for me. Love the first Donald Fagen solo album, The Nightfly. I think it's as good as Gaucho. I think all 8 songs are fantastic. My only complaint is it's a little sterile sounding, a little mechanical, kind of like all those late Steely Dan albums, starting with, the one Steely Dan album, Gaucho, sounds very, very mechanical. But what saves that album for me is the songwriting. The songs are fantastic. Same thing with this album. What saves the production for me is the songwriting. I don't really like crystal clear, perfect sounding albums normally that are just, where there's not one blemish. I like a little bit of human quality. But the songs save this album. Unfortunately, the second album is lacking songs. Kamakiriad from 1993. There are 2 tracks on here I really dig. Tomorrow's Girls, which got a little bit of airplay, and there's a track coming right after that called Florida Room, which I really dig. But the rest is all very mechanical sounding, and that's the problem with each successive Donald Fagen album and Steely Dan album going forward here. They all sound very, very mechanical and very sterile sounding, not like their peak when they had real analog recordings happening and musicians playing at the same time. Yeah, I don't know. There's just something about starting with Gaucho and onward throughout Donald Fagen's solo career. There's just that mechanical drum beat that sounds the same in just about every track. The melodies are really slight. I don't know. I just found this a disappointment. And I bought his third album, Morph the Cat, purged that one. There was another one, Sunken Condos or something like that. I purged that one. So I don't know. I don't know about any more Donald Fagen solo albums, but I kept this because I like both those tracks, Tomorrow's Girls and Florida Room. But otherwise, pretty underwhelming listen here coming after the Nightfly. Another one, too, I really loved was the first Church album. This is the U.S. version. I think it's a nearly perfect album. Just incredible, chimey guitars, catchy songs, great choruses, great atmosphere. But I thought their second album, Blurred Crusade, was kind of underwhelming for my taste. I don't think it has the flair of the first album. There's a few good tracks on here. I like Almost With You, the beginning track, but overall, I just could not get into this album. I don't even know why I kept it. Maybe I'll play it one more time and just see what it sounds like. So another one I felt a little underwhelming, the Blurred Crusade from the Church, their sophomore album from '82. And then last but not least, even though I wouldn't call this like a masterpiece album, I thought it was a fine debut album from Dave Davies of the Kinks. His first solo album from 1980, AFL 13603, the barcode. I thought there was some fine tracks on here. Nothing More to Lose was a great rocker. It got some airplay down, back in the day. The World is Changing Hands, great pop number. Imagination's Real. You know, not a perfect record, but you know, we've never heard a Dave Davies solo album before this. He had recorded one in the late 60s. It wasn't released. Eventually it came out on bonus tracks on various Kinks albums. And then it was released in its entirety, I think, by I think about 10 years ago, 10 or 15 years ago. So this was the first instance of a real Dave Davies solo album. Not bad, but this follow-up, this sophomore album is pretty freaking horrible. So, not that I was expecting anything grand out of Dave for his second album, but I remember giving this one listen, and it was a slog to get through, and it's pretty damn weak. And I'm only keeping it because I'm a Kinks fanatic. So Dave Davies, Glamour, a very, very poor sophomore effort from 1981. Now, there are a bazillion bad sophomore albums, and there's a lot of great sophomore albums. So a lot of those bad sophomore albums I purged over the years. Let me know which ones you would put on a list on the Capo Fetish channel. Put your list of least favorite sophomore albums. And as always, thank you so much for watching, as always. And if you dig the content across the channel, press subscribe. It's free, and we'll see you soon. Take care. Bye-bye.